Hey everyone, my name is Cole. The greatest 2 weeks of 2023 cinema is here. As the world knows, we have a doubleheader with Barbie and Oppenheimer next week. But this week we are blessed with a new addition to the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Just a heads up, this is a spoiler warning. I don't know how to talk about the story of this entry without spoiling, since the promotion and trailers for this film were vague, lackluster, and limited. I mean, seriously, the first trailer of the film was over a year ago and they didn't drop a single thing about the film until 2 months before. The marketing team truly failed this film and it was tough to watch. My inner designer and strategic side is taking over. I'll stop. Anyways, guys, enjoy. In the last 2 to 3 months, I watched all of the Mission Impossible films for my first ever time and I had a blast. All of them, except for Mission Impossible 2, which is one of the worst sequels I've ever had the displeasure of watching, are unbelievably enjoyable action flicks, with a handful of them having fascinating plots. I feel like saying this, I do have a hot take. My favorite Mission Impossible film is Mission Impossible 3.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
I know it's a controversial and weird number one, but it had the highest stakes in the first 3 films, and I really enjoy J.J. Abrams' focus on the character of Ethan Hunt and the psychological torment his character was forced to endure. It was absolutely terrific, and this kind of actually leads into something I wanted to focus on from Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. So, what do I think of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1? It is peak and iconic action cinema. Dead Reckoning Part 1 focuses on the IMF, where they are tasked to track down a terrifying new weapon that threatens all of humanity before it falls into the wrong hands. With control of the future and the fate of the world at stake, the dark forces from Ethan's past closing in, a deadly race around the globe, confronted by a mysterious, all-powerful enemy. Ethan is forced to consider that nothing can matter more than the mission, not even the lives of those he cares about the most, his friends. This synopsis doesn't do Part 1 justice. I'm happy to tell you that this Mission Impossible film has more depth and nuance than the marketing led us to believe. Arguably the most exciting plot point yet, the IMF is tasked to stop a self-aware, advanced parasitic AI from threatening the world. With this possibility of spread media propaganda and society manipulation, this new threat could lead to a world war if it is not stopped. A reason this is so great, in my opinion, is because it captured that psychological energy I haven't felt from these movies since MI3. Seeing mind games be played against Ethan Hunt and the IMF, imagining what could happen next in this duology, it creates that sense of fear and not knowing what is real and what is artificial. That's why I loved MI3. We saw Ethan become absolutely traumatized by the events that unfolded, and I felt that Dead Reckoning Part 1 was seeking to bring that feeling, which I hope Part 2 finds a way to capitalize on. The second this aspect of the story unfolded, I was immediately hooked. Not just because I love films that involve AI, the control and advancement of technology, and possibly examining consciousness. This idea is hyper-realistic in today's environment. There's a key reason why films like Blade Runner 2049, Her, and Ex Machina are aging well. Dead Reckoning will likely do the same. With the rise of AI, this fear is very real. I believe the story will drive the Dead Reckoning duology to age like fine wine as these trepidations and shifts in society and technology progress. So, how does Part 1 handle this concept? I'd say relatively well, as a Part 1 is evidently building up to the climactic end, so there is much more to anticipate in the next film. This AI known as the Entity appears to be fully conscious, exploiting cameras, hacking into communication channels, and even intimidating our protagonist's behavior and voices to deceive our heroes, all by its own free will. It was unbelievably refreshing in my opinion, since it feels like almost every MI film is shadowed by threats of nuclear or chemical warfare. Seeing a different perspective of future events, focusing on threats of psychological warfare and population control, it all clicked for me. Other than this aspect, I will say that the script had some pacing issues. There were a handful of extensive scenes that contained repetitive exposition, which does seem like a trope of the MI franchise that has never worked for me. Of course, there is a lot going on in these films, but can be very overwhelming and especially difficult to follow. Luckily, the performances from the supporting cast were enjoyable as always. Simon Pegg brought some genuinely good laughs and some heartfelt performance within certain parts of the film. Hayley Atwell gave a solid performance in her franchise debut. With that being said, I know I said it already, but I'm about to say a big spoiler, so please click off this video if you are not prepared. I warned you. 3, 2, I warned you once again. 1, I feel like it's just a trope or cliche of the MI franchise to have every female protagonist be a brunette woman and honestly replacing them every few films. They really killed off Ilsa just to replace her with Grace, who I swear to God looks exactly similar. At least with Michelle Monaghan's character, Julia, back in MI3, she was removed from the picture because it was relevant to the story and the growth of Ethan Hunt's character. It just seemed like they wanted to kill someone to raise the stakes, and sadly, I never had a connection to the character of Ilsa. It was wild how quickly Ethan moved on and how little affected him. But hey, it could also make sense because his mission was impossible, pun intended, and he had bigger fish to fry with the threat of the Entity and the fate of the world. Maybe I'm trying to justify it too much because I really loved this movie. Now, I feel like a weakness in the Mission Impossible franchise has been its villains. No, I did not like Solomon Lane. I know I'm gonna get a lot of shit for that. And the one villain that left an actual impression on me was Owen Davian from MI3. Please show mercy on me in the comments. Someone has to agree with me. Philip Seymour Hoffman gave one of the best performances in the entire franchise. His villain was so intimidating and played so many mind games and truly pushed Ethan to his limits. You know what? I'm just gonna stop myself here. Maybe this is a video for another time. If you agree with me that Philip Seymour Hoffman and his character of Owen Davian is the best villain in the Mission Impossible franchise, let me know in the comments. Or if you believe I'm wrong, which you are probably right, I probably am wrong, also let me know, because why not? Let's discuss it. Also like and subscribe. Part 1's villain role is taken by Eastside Morales as Gabriel. I'm very sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. I have to be honest, he did not work for me. Maybe his role in these films will become more intriguing in part 2, but I was not impressed. Sadly, this villain is introduced in a flashback from Ethan's past that was never in the previous films, and I am just expected to care about this climactic event that hasn't really been explored or acknowledged since the original Mission Impossible film, from my memory at least.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Morales gave a solid performance, but sequences of him fighting certain characters or trying to be intimidating did not land for me at all. But hey, I don't think people are here to watch Mission Impossible villains, but instead for the iconic Mission Impossible action and those absurd stunts. This entry wasn't on the level of Fallout or Ghost Protocol for me in regards to the action, but it was naturally well shot and choreographed. Christopher McQuarrie brings another stellar performance in the director's chair. You can tell he and Tom Cruise have wonderful chemistry where they can understand each other's visions and objectives. Speaking of the last great action movie star, Tom Cruise kills it once again. I truly cannot explain how awestruck I was when the film built up to the biggest stunt of the movie, the cliff scene. Of course, I watched the behind the scenes footage they dropped before part 1 released, because I had to see how Tom Cruise pulled off driving off a cliff and parachuting down. It was even better in theaters, you have to experience it. I love how Cruise is so determined to do his own stunts, crazy ones at that. Other than that one scene, there were solid driving scenes, not on the level of anything in John Wick 4, but they were fun and even had some comedic touches that felt a bit off-putting, but they were still appreciated. But hey, if you haven't seen the film, go enjoy all of these sequences yourself because I surely cannot cover them all in this review. Something I really valued in part 1 was that it was a complete part 1 that sets up the next film while still being able to stand on its own. Unlike Across the Spider-Verse, this film was complete and didn't tease you beyond belief. Lastly, in each Mission Impossible film, I'm reminded that Tom Cruise is truly in a league of his own. Very few actors put their lives on the line for a shot, for a scene, to please audiences, and most importantly, make history. Additionally, Cruise is overwhelmingly supportive of the movie industry, promoting the importance of the movie industry and why we should experience blockbusters like Mission Impossible on the big screen. There are truly no actors like Tom Cruise anymore. He is iconic and inspirational. At the end of the day, I loved Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 and desperately need Part 2 to drop as soon as possible. It's impressive that the 7th entry of a franchise is at this level of quality and treated with such intimate care. It is a rare thing to see nowadays. It was another great reminder why cinema is significant, still kicking, and why the Mission Impossible franchise is iconic action cinema. What did you think of Part 1? Did it live up to the hype? If you want to discuss it with me in the comments, go right ahead and leave a like and subscribe while you venture towards that comment button. And hey, make sure to follow me on Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at Cult Protocol because I talk about cinema too often and I truly need help. Additionally, if you follow me on Letterboxd, you can see my official rating for each movie that I review. For a while, I was considering adding my ratings to each review, but I feel like it'd be better to streamline it so you can see all my reviews, and you can also see how I rank the franchise, which hey, maybe I'll rank Mission Impossible in a future video later. As always, my friends, peace.